All right, welcome back. It's Milan with the Tuning Into the One video series, and we'll go ahead and piggyback off of yesterday or the last video that we did 2 days ago or so, or maybe it was 5 days ago, depending on when you're watching this. Either way, we were discussing cars, and we were discussing the R's in the cars, the actions, the recipes, and the strategies that really revolve around the C in cars, which stands for customized, clear, conscious communication, customized, clear, conscious communication. Because a lot of what we do, going back to what we were discussing before, we have these things that happen in our imprint period, which is 0 to 10 years of age, and we move them forward powerfully into our adult lives, which then impact our ability to date, relate, and mate with people as a result of how we imprinted our original relationships with our parents and with significant people in our lives in those first 10 years, whomever they may be. As such, the men pay the daddy bills for the women that they're with, and the women pay the mommy bills of the men that they're with. Why? Because there's a lot of that unresolved stuff that didn't really find a home, and sometimes this comes across in misunderstandings, and we talked about what came first, the chicken or the egg. So who's going to, essentially, when you call it a game of chicken, or you ask the question of the chicken of the egg, do the women respect the men first, or do the men cherish the women first? And what's the right of way in terms of how to start the process? That's really the biggest question. What are we really talking about? We mentioned Taming of the Shrew, Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor, and how what Elizabeth Taylor was really doing was testing Richard Burton to know that if she was going to completely surrender herself and surrender her heart to a man, that she had to know he was worthy, that he was trustworthy, that he was really the right guy to hold her heart and cherish it. So there was some testing going on. More generally, for men and women, what you'll find is that men want to know that they're able to be authentic and transparent and vulnerable in their own way, so that they don't end up getting taken to task and getting criticized and micromanaged like they may have been as little boys by the women that they're with. And they maybe need to have some emotional breadth and depth to them, as well as emotional maturity. For the women, it's more about, hey, I've been taking care of myself. Now here's this guy coming along who says he can take care of me. Maybe we need to really find out, and before we say I do and walk down the aisle and have the whole legal caboodle, if that's your thing, to be able to really find out. So part of this is, how do I know he'll stay with me, or how do I know he's the right one for me? It's through the dating, relating period before you get into the mating, and part of it has to do with, are you respecting the man, and is he cherishing you? And for the guys, same thing. Are you being respected by the women that you're dating, and are you able to cherish the women? The golden rule, we talked about that. So where do we pick up here? We pick up with the recipes and the ingredients, because those are really what will reflect our beliefs, our identities, as well as our values here and now in relationships. And most of all, it's about respect and cherishment. What we're really looking to do is essentially not create a situation of conflict. We want agreement frames to be the way that we work, and we want to use resolution as a way of deflating conflicts and really creating an opportunity for two people to get along swimmingly, easily, better, faster than ever before. Because you can find and attract lasting love, but how do you keep it? How do you grow it? How do you maintain that momentum? It's agreement frames. It's conflict resolution. How do you build? How do you avoid misunderstandings? And how do you build understandings and trust? It's agreement frames and conflict resolution. So basically, it's how to say yes and no in a mindful, respectful, and simple way that allows you to basically say yes or no to questions. So what we're looking to do is design strategies. In order to design strategies, what we want to do is have recipes and ingredients that best serve us regardless of which strategy we're using. In order to do that, what we want to do is make statements. And so we're making statements that reflect our ability to represent thoughts, feelings, emotions without blame, shame, guilt, or finger pointing. So we want to communicate with neutral language that's as descriptive and no fault as possible in order to share information and use this as a long-term approach that'll help us consistently and accurately be able to communicate something to the other side. Effective communication. Back to the 3x3 clarity matrix. What we want to say, what we end up saying, and what the other side or the other person hears, we want those three things to be authentically integrated and aligned so that they are actually one and the same or very close. And in order to do that, we want to start with this normatively neutral languaging. To do that, we want to start saying, I'm experiencing blank because I am experiencing these feelings because of the following reasons. So we're going to design statements, and we're going to design those statements to be as neutral as possible, that communicate the acknowledgement of the voice being heard, and most importantly, that there is a voice there on both sides. So the golden rule: I will practice what I most want to receive. I will give in that practice most what I want to receive. So this is about relevance. When you're making those statements, what we want to do is look at it from a certain perspective. So let's think about this. When you're looking to design your strategies, what you want to do is you want to design those strategies with specific ideas in mind that have a format and an intention. So the basic strategies that you have from a language, both verbal and nonverbal, are cooperative, combative, competitive, critical, or complementary strategies. Cooperative, combative, competitive, critical, and complementary strategies. These strategies will include your thoughts or thought forms. That'll be both inner dialogue, which means the voice inside that, you may not actually verbally say it out loud, but you're actually saying it inside your own head. So you're making statements and you're using words, you're just not verbalizing them outwardly. So that would be your inner dialogue. And then there's your outer dialogue, which you do articulate verbally outwards. Then there's your actions, your habits, your behaviors, your activities, or if you're looking at a kind of like a set of actions or a group of action steps which involve a sequence and order, it involves you thinking, saying, and doing certain things. Now, your body language, along with your physical posture, your physical gestures, and your facial expressions will all come into play here as forms of communication. And then there's your linguistic inflection and verbal intonation, which also play a role, like how you pronounce words and where the emphasis is on the tonality. So for instance, if somebody, typical male-female kind of interaction, where the guy wants to do something and you see the woman cross her arms and so, okay, go ahead, I give you permission. Please go and do that. Now, a man who's looking at things literally says, well, the words that she used would communicate the following information. The meaning is way, way, way different. The crossing of the arms, the intonation, the voice inflection, and the facial expression should all tell you that this is danger, danger, danger. Don't do it. So if you're taking it literally as a guy and you're not really reading any of the other non-verbal signals as well as the tonality and the intonation, then that would just be completely ignoring 95% of the communication coming your way, and you're just going to go like, well, she gave me permission, I'm going for it. Recipe for disaster. Definitely not somebody who's intent on finding a win-win agreement frame. That's more about somebody who would be more narcissistic and just says, got permission. Now I can argue, and she says, why did you do that? I can say, well, you told me it was okay. And in essence, that's correct. So when we're looking at these strategies, they involve thought and thought forms, the inner dialogue between both parties, the outer verbal dialogue that goes on, the actions, the habits, the behaviors, the body language, the physical posturing, the physical gestures, the facial expressions, the linguistic intonation and the linguistic inflection and verbal intonation, along with any accent or cultural pieces. So the final thing here is, are you coming from your positive towards gain energy or your negative away from energy? That will also determine the outcome. Remember, it's as simple as reframing and pre-framing the meaning for yourself in everything when it comes to the thoughts you think and the emotions you feel and how they end up expressing themselves in your physiology. Why? Well, it's been said that no one can cut you off when you're driving if you let them in. So the difference, again, is when you're thinking about all these different things is, are you examining the dialogue? And when you're doing that, no one can cut you off if you let them in. That's a simple pre-frame that you can change the meaning on it. Why? Because if you keep thinking people are cutting you off or cutting in front of you and they're doing it to you, when in essence they might not even know you're alive. So all of a sudden you're having all this inner dialogue that may express itself in outer dialogue at the other driver who doesn't even know you exist. The same thing can be said to happen in interactions between men and women in the dating, relating, and mating process. Except instead of somebody cutting you off, they're saying something and then you take it really personally. And they might not have had the intent. So, the biology may play a significant role. The context of the what you meant to say or what was heard might be completely off. And so then you go with the third section of the 3x3 clarity matrix, which is, remember, you have a voice, you want to be heard and acknowledged. They have a voice, they want to be heard and they want to be acknowledged. If we start with this, we're going to avoid two wrongs making a right, an eye for an eye, which can make the whole world blind. We'll avoid escalating and spiraling the downward tendency to move from mistrust and misunderstanding to even deeper levels of negative emotions and negative spiraling, which never ends well. And just because somebody else is coming from the critical place, like I described in the pool incident with both the woman and the man, who seemed to be kind of a little bit angry or miffed or frustrated about me splashing, or the guy was telling me, don't hit me. I mean, I hadn't even gotten in the pool, I was just about to jump in, and he's already having a transition between something that happened to him in the past to giving me attitude about what like, don't swim next to me because you might hit me. It's like, what? Nobody wants to get hit. There are so many different encounters that we have, from that road rage kind of thing where somebody cut you off, or people just coming from their own head and their own meanings. We can disarm it all. We can go out on dates. We can relate to each other, and we can come from a place that avoids violence or find peaceful alternatives. Avoid aggression and find a kinder alternative. Avoid inflicting verbal, emotional, or physical pain or hurt or fault, and find gentler alternatives by being simple and clear in the questions that we ask ourselves and others, having simple yes or no answers, and just being mindful, kind, respectful, and gentle in our responses and our replies. It'll avoid violence. It'll allow us to avoid being aggressive or to diffuse aggression from the other side. You'll still be able to stand up for yourself and keep your ability to be a welcome mat without being a doormat. So we do all this by examining the dialogue and looking at the communication in terms of intention and the reasoning. We examine the meaning and we give it our own meaning, and we look at what they meant. So when I looked at the guy in the pool and what he said was like, hey, I don't want to be hit, I understood immediately he just wanted to be able to navigate his side of the pool. I find that to be a problem all the time. I used to be a competitive swimmer. I can keep a straight line, some people can't. What you want to do is find a way of being able to deliver your strategy without having to go to a combative or a critical version of that. If you can find a cooperative, a complementary strategy that's going to work a lot better than being combative. Competitive is good as long as you have a frame of reference, realizing that this is everybody wins when we compete a little bit. If you're trying to get to work and everybody else is trying to get to work faster and we're cutting each other off, maybe that's not the best competitive model. Maybe if we started with a cooperative approach, everybody gets to work a little bit slower, but everybody gets to work in one piece. Something somewhere down the road is always going to have us paying a price, so we don't have to play that game. We can find agreement frames and we can create conflict resolution even before conflict happens by pre-framing and reframing to find agreements on meaning and context and agree. If we can't agree on something, then we can at least agree to disagree and allow that to be our creative frame of reference to be able to move forward, because it's powerful. We have so much to share with each other And yet so much of what we have to share is difficult. So remember, you want to make a statement, then you want to examine that statement. When you're examining that statement, you're looking for reasons, relevance, importance, significance. Someone expressed something and gave you an explanation from their perspective or their point of view or their position, and maybe some of it contains passion, maybe some of it contains emotional content which can be expressed and communicated either emotionally or in a more calm and distinctly rational way. Passion doesn't have to equate to anger and hatred. Frustration doesn't have to equate to some form of violence. And feelings of pain and hurt do not have to equate to physical, emotional, or mental states that cause pain and want us to respond by getting revenge or exacting revenge or responding or replying in kind with equal measure. Why? Because two wrongs don't make a right. Because an eye for an eye will leave the whole world blind. And because escalating and spiraling negative energy almost never ends up with good results. So what do we do with all this information? We want to be able to examine the dialogue, examine the meanings, and then design a dialogue response that communicates in an effective and clear manner. We want to pre-frame our intention or agree with the intention that was set forward, or we want to disagree with the intention that was set forward and be okay with it by saying, it's not about right or wrong. We both have a choice. We both have a right to our voice, to be heard, and to be acknowledged. That's simple. Pre-frame and reframe. Examine dialogue, examine meaning. Design dialogue moving forward that has agreement frames. Pre-frame it and reframe it so that you create those agreement frames to either say, yes, I agree, or no, I don't agree, and let's agree to disagree. Because when you do this, you're going to create neutral, mindful, and respectful dialogue frames for each other. You're going to be able to design and negotiate meanings, terms, and conditions for simple conversation that always focuses on win-win outcomes and conflict resolution, so that the agreement is there or the agreement to disagree is there. On meanings, on terms, so each party can have their voice, can be heard, can be acknowledged with a simple yes or no. So whether somebody's splashing too much, whether you don't want to get hit, or swimming in somebody else's lane, it can all be handled with a specific recipe that includes mindfulness, that includes respect, and that includes a neutral way of communicating information. So that you can get to a place where if there are things that need to be resolved, like, hey, you know what, when you raise your voice, I feel yelled at. When you yell, I get scared. When you yell, I feel I've done something wrong. When you raise your voice, I feel or I think. You can start communicating things, or you can even take it a step back and be more neutral. And you can say, when other people raise their voices, the way that I interpret it means that I start feeling yelled at. Then the other person can say, oh my God, I can be a really passionate person. Sometimes my voice goes up and I don't even realize it. And when I do that, it's because I have a lot of passion. It's not because I'm getting angry. And somebody going, oh my God, I never thought of that. And it can all go back to when we were kids and maybe our dad would yell and we equated things. So now when other people raise their voices, guess what? We equate it with that imprint period, and that's what we don't want to do. Or we want to consciously acknowledge that that's what we do and then realize that there are other choices that people are making on what meaning that is, that they're simply passionate people. Italians talk with their hands. Latins tend to be more passionate. So you would think that they're fighting, but they could be getting along. It's just that your model of how you were raised may not be the same. So we want to continue to use cars as a vehicle to be able to customize clear, conscious communication in our actions, to design recipes and strategies that really work on agreement frames and allow for conflict resolution to be simple and easy and effortless. Because once we find and attract that perfect dream ideal person, we want to be able to create customized, clear, conscious communication which allows us to keep it, grow it, and really be able to nurture, cherish, and respect it from all perspectives. When we can do that, it's amazing. You can have an ongoing in-love affair with your significant other, with your dream partner, or even if you're on a date, you can just have really amazing statement of facts with reasons that allow for yeses and nos, agreement frames, conflict resolution before any conflict even arises, and avoid misunderstandings, all with simple processes. I appreciate, I respect, I acknowledge, you have every right to, wow, I appreciate where you're coming from. For me, it's a little bit different. I come from here. You're yelling at me would be the old way to express it. You could say, wow, when I sense somebody raising their voice, it's like I'm being yelled at, and that really makes me feel like I did something wrong. So please be mindful of not raising your voice. Wow, what a difference from, will you stop yelling at me? And you're really communicating the same information. You're making a statement of fact, you're giving your reasons, and you're allowing for a dialogue to build on agreement frames. So that either you agree, yes, I won't raise my voice again, or you can agree to disagree, and the other person can say, I'm just passionate when I raise my voice, it just means I care. So I hope we can find a way of making that dialogue work for us. Just like I hope you can make this video work for you. So again, subscribe to this channel, like us, comment on this video. Until the next time, and as always, this is Milan wishing you amazing dating success and relationship mastery. And looking for Mr. Right now? Find out more, book your free introductory session, only 3 a week. They go fast, first come, first serve. This is Milan wishing you the best. Until next time, bye for now.